some people want to become doctors. I think that's absolutely valid.
But we already have tried this experiment. We already tried paying people for doing nothing. Guess what? It turns out that sitting home
I
and
object
cramming
to all of
Cheetos and
that.
soda down your gullet doesn't make you a Rembrandt, a Beethoven, or a John Hopkins. So,
Hello, once again. This is Left Mike. Follow along at Twitter at Debate Left Mike, and here, as always, with my good friend Mr. Right Mike. He's also on Twitter at Debate Right Mike. If you want to get in touch with him, and I'd like to give a shout out to my peoples. Today, Sunday, July 1st,
the soy industry.
we soy boys.
Oh, I thought you were giving us a shout out to the soy industry.
No, that was not. It's July 1st. That means it's the 151st birthday of Canada. So I am rocking my Canada jersey right there. Happy birthday, Canada. Happy Canada Day to all of my Canadians. And happy Canada Day to all you Americans. Remember, if you get out of line again, we'll burn down your house again. So
I would like to then, I didn't know that was the thing, but I would like to also then wish Canada a happy Canada Day. Happy Canada Day, Canada.
thank you. We appreciate that. We graciously accept your
Yeah, this guy introduced me to poutine, and I thought it was going to be terrible, and it was amazing.
So good. Poutine is
so
a national treasure.
Tell him
Absolutely.
tell him about the poutine. What did you have to do to get that poutine?
Okay, so this is good. So there was a little Canada Day celebration it was in Tampa, in Ybor City, for those that are local to that area. And they have a poutine truck, a food truck that specializes in poutine. So I was very excited. I got to the poutine truck.
It was Canada Day last year, right?
It was on Canada Day, yep. And they informed me that they did not have any fries. They had the gravy and they had the cheese curds. And I said, well, hold the fuck on. If there's one thing Americans can do, it's put French fries in every corner. I will be right back. So I went sprinting out of the bar, located some fries at another bar, ordered a bunch, brought them back, and served up hot, fresh poutine to all of my American friends. And pretty good, right?
It was really good. Yeah. I kind of want some right now. So
there it is.
Yeah, that was
poutine.
awesome.
So this episode brought to you by Canadian Poutine. What are we doing? What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking in honor of Canada Day, a very socialist sort of policy that you're a big fan of. Universal basic income.
Wonderful.
So this is definitely Mike's forte. Left Mike.
It is.
Obviously.
So first I'm going to tell you what it is, and then I'm going to tell you why I think that we need it in a few words, and then I'll let Mike give his intro. But for those that are not familiar, universal basic income is the idea that every citizen should get X number of dollars, basically a free salary from the government for doing absolutely nothing. And I know that the conservatives listening probably just started raging and throwing things inside their car. There are two reasons that this is necessary and beneficial. The reason that it's necessary is technology is inevitably going to put a large portion of the workforce out of a job. It's just going to happen. At that point, you can't have people dying. I think we can all agree that if a machine takes your job and you can't find another one, that's not a death sentence. So universal basic income provides you with the necessities. The reason that I think it's beneficial is if you implement a UBI correctly, you can eliminate most social welfare programs, because if you're obviously providing a salary for your necessities, you also then don't have to provide food stamps and housing assistance and all of that, because it's all covered in one package. So I am in favor of it. I think it's inevitable, and I think we should start the conversation now. How about you, right, Mike?
Universal basic income is a bad one for me, but it's one that I have come a lot more left on just from talking to you about it, because it is a fair argument that it may be a cheaper and more equitable solution than our current welfare state. So if it's better and saves us money, it's really hard to argue against it. Really hard. I mean, that's a sticky argument if you're arguing against it, and if it is proven to be clearly better. But otherwise, I don't really believe UBI is a good solution. I don't think it's desirable to have a universal basic income. I don't think that taking the motivation away to work or the need to work from people is a beneficial thing for them. I just really don't. And Mike has ideas of what else they're going to do, and I'm sure he's going to talk about that, because they're valid points. But I'm willing to accept it if it's proven to be cheaper than a welfare state, but I otherwise not a fan of universal basic income.
Skeptical at best. That's
very
fair.
skeptical.
That's fair. So I'll lead into it there, and I'll lead first with the economic benefits of it. So capitalists and conservatives alike like to align themselves with the idea of free market and that the market can self-regulate and all of that good stuff. They hate big government, and more than big government, they hate inefficient government, right? They hate spending on things unnecessarily, and I think that's why a lot of us can get behind universal basic income. So right now, and actually, Right Mike just pointed this out to me. Right now, it's possible to get approximately $30,000 in government benefits from by way of housing assistance, childcare, et cetera, food stamps. And they're all doled out on different programs. So you have someone that does the housing, you have someone that does the food stamps, someone else that does any social welfare and all of that, which means all of those organizations have offices and employees and overhead, and that's what that's what you don't like. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what you don't like about big government. Am I correct?
For the most part, so big government is. I mean, that's actually not even that fair of an assessment, but I would say more that my problem with government is it's always a third party. And there are legitimate things that the third party may want to do to intervene between parties A and B, but party C should not be intervening. So it's not fair if party C says, I'm going to take from party A and give to party B. If party C, the government, says, I want to prevent party A from harming party B, that's where I think there's a legitimate case for government intervention. So basically, I don't think the government does anything efficiently. I think that we need free market solutions to just about everything.
Right.
So the government's built on inefficiency.
Right. And we disagree a little bit on that. But with that in mind, what UBI would basically do is calculate how much it takes to live, how much it takes to exist, and above like severe poverty, but obviously not middle class, because we don't want to de-incentivize the ability to go out and innovate and do great things and be rewarded for it. But if you give someone, call it $25,000, call it $30,000 a year, if you give someone that allowance, if you will, they are then able to spend it on the free market as they see fit, which means you don't have areas that are just Section 8 housing. You don't have certain foods you can buy on food stamps and all of that. The market and market competition, and I agree that competition is good, will then hopefully drive the demand for those services and prices for those services down as you free up that liquid capital to be spent where the market is best suited. So you give power back to the people and take kind of that power out of the government's hands. And ideally, you do so without, any of these people losing access to benefits and losing or slipping into poverty. So that is the idea in premise in the utopian world. And I agree that this is a very utopian long-term goal because there is a lot of things that have to be in place. So what are some of your criticisms of that point?
I could never. So the math behind giving everybody $30,000 a year is insane. That would never work. That's way too much money because you're giving it to everybody. Right now, that amount of benefits where it's possible to get 30,000 is given out to select few, right? Very few people that are actually on those programs as a percentage of the overall population. So that already is a broken system. My UBI plan would be something more like call it $1,000 a month, and it's adjusted for inflation. It doesn't go up if you have kids. So one of the big problems I see with the welfare system is that it incentivizes single parenthood, which is the worst thing you can do to children. The absolute worst thing you can do to a child is have a kid as a single parent. It just
right up there with putting them in cages.
Statistically,
single parenthood
cages. Probably along the same lines, because if they're in a cage, they don't have their parents. So it's
Jesus. All right.
It's about the same thing basically. But yet the left's all for single parenthood, Go you.
Yeah, we're all for it.
And of course, this shouldn't need to be said, but it needs to be said, the whole not all thing. Anytime you say a generalization, it needs to be said, just so you know. I'm not saying every single parent is terrible. There's a lot of single parents, though, that are doing their best and are legitimately great people, and their kids are still way worse off than they would be if they had a normal two-parent household. The data does not... There's no way to refute that with data. So if you want to refute that, it's going to be all about feelings. So I hope we don't go there because this is a different conversation. But if UBI would not incentivize people to have kids, it would disincentivize them in a way, because if your income doesn't go up because of having kids, then you have to take that little income that you have and then split it to take care of children as well. If you don't give them UBI or dependent care benefits for for their children, which I would never do. I wouldn't have it even kick in until probably 21.
So I'm split on that. I don't think you could not have some UBI coverage for a new child.
Oh.
But
system.
I think that it should be
Have 10.
I think that it should be proportionate to the the variable cost of that additional child, right? So
why do you get punished for choosing not to have kids?
You're not getting punished. That's
because if they get more money to have kids.
No, they're getting money just to pay for that kid. Let me finish. So I think they should get a portion of the UBI for basically what? For food, additional shelter. That the cost that additional child is incurring, which diminishes from one child to the next, right? For the most part, because when your fourth kid to your fifth kid, it doesn't get that much more expensive. It's a little bit more food. You already have the housing. But I think the vast majority of the UBI for a child should be put into an account that basically goes into a savings account. So when they do turn 21, and now they have a nest egg, something to fall back on. I think that would be a great safety net to have in place for a new adult coming into the workforce. But UBI would then largely replace social welfare, and thus it would get the government out of the way in many regards. The other thing that, unfortunately, I think down the road we can talk about it. Although I sell it as UBI, Universal Basic Income, I think you would almost have to, from a fiscal standpoint, you would almost have to wean away the benefit.
You would make it a minimum income instead of a universal income.
Yeah, or basically that you get it. Anyone making less than $100,000 gets it, and then between $100,000 and $200,000, it basically gets weaned off. So you have to do it slowly enough that you're not disincentivizing, slipping into the next bracket, if you will, and then not getting it. So you can't have a hard line. But I think that from a fiscal standpoint, that it should be targeted towards low and middle class persons. So that's a general implementation. Keep in mind, guys, this is a high level thing. We're nowhere near implementation. I just want to get the idea out there and get us talking about it, because with technology advancing, I think it's inevitable.
Just for a frame of reference here, I hate this idea so much that it makes me feel like my skin's crawling. So if I'm like scratching myself or something, it's not because I'm a meth addict. It's because this conversation, I find it appalling that I'm even considering universal basic income, because I'm so fundamentally opposed to this idea that just by nature of waking up and breathing a breath of air on U.S. soil, you are entitled to someone else to give you money. I hate that idea so very much. But I'm willing to consider universal basic income on the premise that it is a more equitable and a better system than our welfare state. I want to incentivize people to get married before they have children, so that child has two parents in the household. I want to incentivize them to save money. I want to incentivize them to pay for health insurance. So if I was controlling UBI, I would make a portion of that mandatory to go towards health care. And the difference is it's not a healthcare mandate as you have to buy health insurance. If you really don't want health insurance, you can plunk that money into a health savings account that can only be spent on healthcare, or you could buy health insurance with it. So that way it would be sort of achieving some of the goals of Obamacare that were failed by insuring more people, instead of just saying we're going to fine you if you don't get insured.
Right.
Well, here's this money, and this part of it has to be spent on healthcare anyway. So you can buy healthcare. You can decide how much you want to spend. $100 a month on healthcare and save $100. Do you want to save the $200? Do you want a really good healthcare plan and spend all $200, or you want to spend more than $200 and get a supplemental policy or whatever? But let the free market provide the policies. Don't have the government setting up healthcare exchanges and all that jazz. So I think that would be. I think that would look. I just solved your universal healthcare Obamacare thing too. You're welcome.
I think that, thanks. I think that's obviously a step in the right direction. One of the complaints that I hear and I want to deal with UBI is the demonization of poor people. What's to stop someone for getting their, let's say I want like $3,000 a month. What's to stop them from getting their $3,000, going and spending it all on drugs and liquor, and then still being homeless? And while I think that it doesn't happen nearly as much as conservatives like to think, I do think that personal responsibility is important.
We don't like to think it; we observe it.
Okay, well, it's exceedingly rare, but I think that it's absolutely I think it's a valid concern. So
didn't live in Chicago for years.
Here is my idea to thwart that. I'm a big fan of personal liberty. I know that's going to surprise a lot on the right, but I think personal freedom,
liberty, that doesn't.
I know, like that
at all.
Like that, you're going to learn a lot on this show, Mike. Right. But I think personal liberty is important and freedom is important. So I think, you should get this, whatever the allowance is, you get it every month. but I think you're on a three-strike policy. If something happens where you mismanage your money and you can't afford the things, the basic necessities, food, housing, and all that, I think that there should be a slush fund where we allow you, say, okay, here's an extra $500, strike one. And if you get three strikes, now you don't lose the benefit, but now it goes into basically accounts for certain things. So we allot X number of dollars for housing, X number of dollars for food, so on and so forth. And there's only a small portion left over that's discretionary spending for any other luxuries. And that way, you should slowly build up a slush fund for things like rent, food, and all of that at the cost of less discretionary spending. So now we've dealt with that problem too.
I've thought about that a lot on the food side, because I don't even want to make it an option, to be perfectly honest. Even with our existing SNAP, the food stamp program, I hate the fact that you can walk in and buy a Red Bull and potato chips and all this stuff. That's insane. I mean, that's just why? Why can you do that? Why don't you have to buy things like milk and bread and vegetables and fruits and chicken and things that are healthy for you? Make an argument against bread or whatever, but
because
or milk. But why can you go in and spend it on steak and lobster and
why
chips?
should the government tell you what you get to eat?
Because if it's not your money, they can tell you what to do with it. It's not like they get to mandate what you have to eat if it's your money.
If you get to the end of the month and you're not hungry, then that program.
Yeah, but I'm also going to be the one footing the bill for their obesity later on when they're driving up my healthcare costs.
Well, we'll get to healthcare.
Yeah.
All right, so
stop being obese by eating a terrible diet. Eat less and move more. Isn't that what Michelle Obama said?
There's so much to that argument there. So I'm gonna
less carbs, more cardio. Maybe try that out for a change. maybe not pretend that expensive food or healthy food is really expensive.
It is more expensive.
Maybe reach for the chicken breasts on sale today at Target for $1.99 for 16 ounces. It's a pound.
Yeah. All right.
That seems a little more nutritious than a bag of 3D Doritos Cooler Ranch flavor.
If you want to have a bag of Doritos, have a bag of Doritos. I think that's
not
fine.
On my dollar.
Not on his
dollar.
Your own
money.
The other part of UBI that I think is very interesting, and this is more of an advanced stage when the vast majority, or at least half of the population, has been replaced by machines. Yeah. Or just our robot. Does a robot get UBI?
So you just imagine everybody just like hanging out all day on their like $25,000 a year and just doing
nothing.
Orgies.
So no, I would assume if you're getting paid, right? No, but I think that the other interesting thing, this is not my original idea. I picked this up from the Venus Project, and for those that have studied it, there are flaws there. So don't come at me like I'm some utopian princess that is pitching this idea. I think don't
call him a princess. He hates it.
Good points. I hate it. I hate Snowflake. I hate Princess. I hate Soy Boy. I hate it. But UBI would give humanity the ability to pursue whatever you're passionate at, right? If all your basic needs and all of your needs and some of your basic wants are taken care of, now you can go out and do things that you're passionate about, right? And right now that's like school teachers, because they live like at the poverty line. I think that's terrible. But whatever you want to do, whatever drives you, you can go and do. And I think that would really be a great asset to development. So if you want to become a doctor, go do it. If you want to be an artist, do that. If you want to be a philosopher, do that, right? And I think that would play into your strengths and really drive an enlightenment period in human culture. Why are you laughing? The floor is yours.
Oh, dear God. For starters, the idea that the meaning of life, it comes from your passions, I don't think that's accurate. I think that's actually a really deeply flawed idea, way of looking at the world. I think like me personally, most things I've derived meaning from are difficult pursuits, things that I maybe didn't even want to do or didn't even have other options, but I had to either do it or give up. Like
building a wall in front of Mexicans. Was that a difficult pursuit?
I didn't build the wall, but
so
music's a big passion for me. I was in every different orchestra and band in high school and then in college. But the biggest accomplishments in my life, the biggest changing events, life-changing events for me that have shaped me as a person are things like doing Army ROTC, commissioning as an Army officer, not from playing a trumpet solo. So I think the meaning that we derive from life comes to do more with overcoming challenges than it does from pursuing your passions, if that makes
Is that
sense.
why? Is that why you like keeping people poor, in the hopes that their struggle?
Oh, because I completely
Right.
forgot. So that when you give people money for doing nothing, they become doctors. That's your argument, is that they're going to go out. If we just did universal basic income, then these people are going to go become doctors and lawyers or
Some people
artists.
want to become doctors. I think
So,
that's absolutely valid.
but interesting, that is fair. I'm sure that some of them do. But
Right.
we already have tried this experiment. We already tried paying people for doing nothing. It's called welfare benefits, unemployment, in a lot of cases, Social Security disability, which is really abused. So guess what? It turns out that sitting home
I
and cramming
object to all of
Cheetos and
that.
soda down your gullet doesn't make you a Rembrandt, a Beethoven, or a John Hopkins. So I think that's a really terrible, terrible argument
Oh,
in favor of UBI.
that jab that hurt my soul. That was
Is it?
deeply.
Am I wrong?
It would no. You score a point. If anyone's keeping score at home, we can chalk one up for right Mike on that one. That was a pretty solid line. No, I think that's fair. I think that the problem that you have with UBI, and you haven't said it explicitly, but we've both alluded to it, is you don't want to disincentivize innovation. You don't want to disincentivize hard work or any of that, because that in itself can drive or grind human progress to a halt. So just as I think that UBI could now be something that drives human progress and enlightenment, I also think that left unchecked, just like capitalism, it'll grind everything to a halt and actually limit human progress and human development. So everything in balance, but I think UBI is a good conversation to have. Anything you want to add before we do last words?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a fundamental disagreement with the justification for UBI that comes from, I'm not even going to call it the left. It doesn't have to be a left wing or a right wing thing. One of the issues I have with it is it's based in the idea that technology is going to outstrip human production, and then people are going to be basically useless. I think that a true free market would still be a better solution, because you can't just price people out of the market endlessly. By creating these more efficient technologies, there's no demand for there's no demand for their labor. Because if there's no demand for their labor, then there's no demand for the product. Because if you start cutting out vast swaths of the population, unless you offered them UBI or something,
that's what I'm
the
saying.
problem. I'm thinking UBI would almost be like every other government program, where it has the opposite of the intended effect. So when people do have a guaranteed basic standard of living, then technology is free to surpass them, because there's not the same demand for work.
No, because you're already seeing it, right? I go into a Walmart now, and half of the stations are already automated, right?
Don't we have minimum wage laws? There's a lot of Walmart workers that are minimum wage employees.
Right, but what I'm saying is that technology.
If we didn't have minimum wage laws, don't you think there'd be more people escorting you into the movie theater and things like that? Like jobs that used to exist that don't exist anymore.
Yeah, of course, and then they would be on food stamps. Well, we're covering that very soon, because you're absolutely wrong on it, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
But no, technology is going to continue to advance. Corporations, by their nature and design, are going to maximize profits and do everything they can to maximize profits. And when technology becomes more and more affordable, that's going to mean less and less people in the workforce. So in that regard, UBI is unavoidable. Right?
I guess I misspoke when I was explaining it. I'm not talking about the labor demand. I'm talking about the labor supply. Like that's going to limit the. So what happens if you think of it like a limit function, as that supply of labor decreases because you have UBI, for example, you've instituted something like that, the labor supply is going to be decreased considerably, which enables technology then to cut out wide swaths of the population.
Yeah, I see.
I don't think that's going to happen in a free market. I don't think that the businesses are going to be able to let's make half the population unemployed because of this great technology, because the technology is developed because they have an incentive to develop it. And if developing a technology that cuts out a majority of the labor force eliminates the demand for your own product.
That's a fair point.
So I think it's a limit. I think it's something that's kind of dangerous and tenuous, that it's going to get close. And it's going to be like a tenuous, balance between.
To simplify that, because it took me to get there, what Right Mike there is saying is that free market companies are going to be mindful not to lay off 100,000 people, because those 100,000 people can no longer buy their products. However, if you give UBI out to those 100,000 people and they quit, now technology will take their place out of necessity, and you've basically shifted good, hardworking people onto the government dime. So I think that's a fair point. I think that's a fair point to approach. So So I'm still going to stand by my point that I think that it is, in some degree, unavoidable with technology, and I think that in limiting the size of government, I think that it's fiscally responsible to do so in limiting those plans. And I'm a big fan of the philosophical benefits that come from having humanity's time freed up by advanced technology. So thanks for listening, guys. Check us out on the web, leftmic.rightmic.com. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, your mom's house, wherever you're listening. We're there, probably. And on Twitter, @DebateRightMic. And no, that's you.
Yeah, go ahead and see if you guys can stream it on your Obama phone.
And we'll be right back with more Fan Brews.
This week, I am choosing Jordan B. Peterson. I don't know if he drinks beer. I know he drinks alcohol seldomly. He used to drink a lot. But I would just absolutely love to sit down and talk to Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, you just, you mean the chauvinist.
I read his 12 Rules for Life. I just got Maps of Meaning. I have not read it yet, but I'm reading Maps of Meaning next.
How do you, so I'll throw you a bone on this one. You got me onto Jordan Peterson. I've watched a couple of his videos on YouTube. There was one, I don't remember the name of it. It was I believe a BBC journalist interviewing him, and he just completely dismantled her. So I've yet to see the outrage.
Yeah,
the reason
it doesn't exist.
But so how do you respond to that? Because obviously this guy is controversial, but how do you respond to those?
So he became, I believe his initial kickoff into fame was he came out openly against Bill C-16 in Canada, which he said amounted to compelled speech, because you can be punished and your employer can be punished if you choose not to use somebody's pronouns of their choice.
Right.
So he felt that was compelled speech and said he's not going to do it. And then they said, well, it's not even a criminal offense, and he was saying they're saying, no, we're not gonna put you in jail. It's just like, he's like, well, if it's a law, like there's a fine. He's like, yeah, what if I don't pay the fine? You put me in jail. It's like, okay, yeah, you're right. So yeah, we'll put you in jail for not using someone's pronouns. And everyone said he was crazy when he made that claim initially, and then the bill went through and was interpreted exactly the way that he said it would be. So he was right on that, but there was these students outside just yelling at him and stuff and arguing with him about using their pronouns and stuff. And I'll find that video and link it below. And I watched this just really calm, collected, polite, well-spoken professor
so calm. Yeah,
respond to this angry group of students so reasonably and so well thought out. And you could tell that he was thinking things out, and his mind is just open, but he's got a lot of data to process, And they were just being so hostile. And then there was the hit pieces done on him, which were, absolutely insane. There's the whole Lindsay Shepherd affair and everything as well. So I became aware of him through that, and I look into some things. When you actually sent me immediately when I mentioned him, you're like, wow, I can't believe that you support that guy, blah, blah, blah. And you never heard of him. You just tore him apart.
Yeah.
Like, just tore him apart. And like, based on what? And you're like, this article. And you're like, well, it has links, dude. I'm pretty sure it's not BS. And I read the article, and then I read the article that the article referenced, and it'd be the same thing as saying, like, I don't hate Hispanics. And then someone cut you off and said, hate Hispanics or something. And it's like, and they said, well, I asked him about his views on Hispanics, and his response was, hate Hispanics. That's taken way out of context. And they've done that to him.
I don't think it was taken that far out of context, so I'm going to get back to you on the Jordan Peterson thing. I know he's going to come up.
It was the enforced monogamy comment that you took issue with, and he did not talk about enforced monogamy in that way at all. So much society enforcing monogamy.
Not ready to endorse or defend the guy, but I will admit, from what I've seen so far,
Dr. Peterson, let's have a beer, brother. I'll buy it. It's on me.
Very, very, very level-headed. All right, my turn.
Yeah.
This is going to be a weird one. You ready for this? This is kind of strange. I'm going to go with Jesus Christ.
Who's that?
The guy, the actual guy. No, I think that, so I was born and raised atheist. I became Christian for a while. I'm no longer Christian due to American Christianity being kind of bastardized, in my opinion, of what it is. But I think that Jesus was actually a dude that lived, and some weird shit went down. So I think it would be fun to kick it with him. Who's, get Maury Povich and see who the dad really is. I think that would be a good part of that conversation. But yeah, I think that guy would be a fascinating historical figure to kick it with. And who knows? Maybe he and Muhammad are buddies.
Don't you think that he would be the least fascinating person to kick it with? Because he would just be perfect in every way.
Well,
That he would be so polite to the server.
I assume that's how you feel every day you do the show with me, right?
No.
Isn't it? It's just wow, just flattered me. All right.
No. It's
No.
not. No. So I guess Jordan Peterson and Jesus, if you guys are listening, please have a beer with us.
If you guys are listening, we'll see you next week, guys.
See you next week. Oh, what are we talking about next week?
I don't think we know
We're
yet.
talking
because they're all
about
gonna be out of order.
female genital mutilation, I think,
They're
right?
gonna be out of order. Yeah, there it is. All right, good.